Hello everyone, Ryan here. So I saw Bohemian Rhapsody. That's right, Bohemian Rhapsody. The biopic about the band Queen, also Freddie Mercury. And I guess you could say it does focus a lot more on Freddie Mercury than on any of the other band members. But ultimately, you know what, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it definitely held my interest. Now, granted, you know, I was already a big fan of Queen beforehand, and a big fan of Freddie Mercury. But still, even, you know, before watching it, I didn't quite know what to expect because, you know, even though I've been familiar with Queen's music for I don't know how long, probably ever since I was like 6 or 7 years old, and because that's when my parents, you know, I grew up always, you know, having some kind of rock music playing in the background. I mean, especially on weekends, because my parents would usually have a party like every now and then, or like every other weekend, and play stuff like Queen and Led Zeppelin, The Doors, Deep Purple, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Jimi Hendrix, all of that, you know, great, awesome rock music. Which inevitably, inspired me to pick up the guitar, you know, eventually when I was a teenager, so. But anyways, enough about me. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I kind of missed the very, very beginning of it, because I went to the theater. I saw it with my parents, my mom and dad, my sister, and my little nephew tagged along as well. Because actually, it's kind of cool because my little nephew, his name's Logan. He's barely 7 years old, I think. Yeah, 7, and he's just recently started getting into rock music, and yeah, he's already kind of familiar with bands like Queen. I mean, because in some of the video games he's played, they use some rock songs, and so yeah, he went too. So I mean, we kind of missed the beginning because we had to wait for my sister to show up, but I really don't think we missed too much. I want to say maybe we missed like the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes of it probably at the most. But either way, I still liked it. Really, I have no complaints about the movie. I mean, I did kind of feel like they could have like transitioned a little better to when it came to transitioning to different scenes. But I mean, it wasn't like they didn't do it in a way that I couldn't follow along. And plus, I kind of feel like when it comes to these kinds of movies, I mean, I'm pretty sure the majority of the viewing public, I mean, most of us are familiar with movies about bands and musicians and all that. So, I kind of feel like, yeah, the transitions in here, you know, they could have been a little bit better, but again, they still worked fine, at least for me. That's a minor complaint, really, overall. I will say I liked that this movie focuses a lot more on the music, like the actual, I mean, as far as when Queen recorded their album, actually it shows them when they recorded their first album, which I didn't know that they ended up selling the van that they were using at the time, just to record their first album. I also didn't know how, Freddie Mercury was introduced to the other guys in the band, because I guess they were already playing in a band, and they were called something like To Smile or something like that. Because I supposedly they got the idea for that band name because the drummer was a dentist, or he went to dental school, some kind of dental school, I guess. But they could have just been joking about that part. And so yeah, Freddie Mercury, he saw them. I guess he had already been to a couple of the shows. And then one day, the singer for that band, for the band To Smile or whatever, quits. And that's when, I think the same day or the following day, Freddie Mercury introduces himself to the drummer and the guitar player, of course, guitar player Brian May, and the drummer Roger Taylor, I believe. Yeah. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong about that. So yeah, and then at first they were reluctant. They were reluctant to have him as their new singer, because I guess they didn't like how he looked for the most part, and something to do with the drummer even tells him something to the effect of that he can't be the new singer because of how his teeth look, or I mean, I'm paraphrasing what he actually says in the movie. And but then Freddie Mercury then just belts out a song. I want to say it's one of their songs. I mean, not a Queen song, obviously, but the band To Smile, which at that time, they were just some local band, so he belts out one of their songs and pretty much blows them away. So yeah, then they find a bass player, because their original singer played bass and was also the lead singer. So yeah, and they found a bass player, which is a guy named John Deacon. And then I like that it shows the first show that they did with Freddie Mercury, because at that time he was still going by his original, his birth name, or rather his last name. Another thing too, I didn't know that Freddie Mercury, he was actually Pakistani, because both his parents were from Pakistan. Yeah, I really had no idea about that. Which I guess that's what contributed to his, unique, exotic kind of look, I guess. But yeah, I guess it made sense that he would be Pakistani. He kind of they kind of show here and there, in the movie, that he grew up in this very different culture from what, I guess, a very different culture when you compare it to that of London culture, I guess, or just Western culture in general. The whole comparing Eastern culture with Western culture thing. They kind of somewhat touch on that in this movie. So, which I found interesting. I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about that. So, but I guess ultimately they didn't get too in depth with that, because ultimately what did come across was the fact that Freddie Mercury wasn't comfortable with letting people know a lot about his childhood and his roots, I guess, and the whole Pakistani culture, I guess, that he grew up in. So, which I guess it was understandable too, because, you know, Freddie Mercury being a homosexual man and a performer, and is, you know, like, he ultimately, I guess, didn't feel very nurtured by his parents. Well, I guess maybe more so, you know, didn't feel encouraged at all, you know, especially by his father. And his father wanted him to act a certain way, behave a certain way, and ultimately, you know, he rebelled against that. Which makes sense. I mean, that usually is the case for a lot of people. I mean, I would say not just musicians or artists or creative types, but a lot of people in general. So yeah, and then sometime after that, you know, I like that, you know, and then they do show pretty much the entire, or almost the entire recording process of when they were recording the album, which of course ultimately ended up having their most famous song, Bohemian Rhapsody. And I found that part to be very interesting. I don't know how anyone else, you know, as far as anyone else who has seen the movie, because I kind of feel like when it comes to that kind of thing, when these kinds of movies, when they show, you know, musicians and bands recording, you know, being in a studio and just the entire recording process, sometimes I kind of feel like if not everybody can truly appreciate that kind of thing, those kinds of scenes within these kinds of movies. But for me, I liked it. And I mean, I got the impression that, at least in the theater I was in, most of the people seemed to appreciate it, at least on some level. And I mean, for example, I liked that. I didn't know when they were recording Bohemian Rhapsody, I didn't know that the drummer, he was the one that ended up singing the high parts, like the really high pitched parts. He was the one that ended up singing Galileo. If you're not familiar with the song Bohemian Rhapsody, there's a part in that song where there's this high pitched voice that says Galileo, Galileo, Galileo. But obviously, much more high pitched than that. And they're recording that part, and then like Freddie Mercury kept telling the drummer to go higher, and so he would try to sing it in a higher register, and again he would tell him, you know, sing it higher than that, and then at one point, like, the drummer said, "So I can't sing it any higher." And he said something like, you know, I feel like my nuts are caught in my throat, or so maybe, you know, that whole scene was not only funny but interesting and informative. You know, ultimately, it made me appreciate the fact that, you know, while back then at that time, which was in the 70s, I believe, yeah, sometime in the 70s, while so many other rock bands, you know, they were sticking to a certain formula when it came to writing songs. Queen, they were one of those bands one of so very few bands that weren't afraid to experiment and mix a bunch of different genres. I mean, such as, you know, obviously Queen did a lot of stuff where they mixed opera with rock, also like bluesy kind of stuff, and yeah, they just like made it their own, you know, weren't afraid to just experiment and just do it and see what happened. And pretty much, I mean, at least in the movie, it shows that, them doing that, not being afraid to experiment, is what ultimately contributed to their success as a band. Not only that, but just what's the word? Ultimately contributed to them becoming a part of mainstream culture, mainstream rock culture, and cemented their place in the rock world. I guess I don't know how else one would put it. Oh yeah, I mean, another thing too, as far as the performances go, I really have no complaints about it, about any of the performances, especially Rami Malek, if that's how you pronounce his name, Rami Malek, or Rami Malek. His portrayal as Freddie Mercury was definitely like really great. I would say really authentic. And I mean, granted, I'm not old enough to have known Freddie Mercury in real life, obviously. But I mean, I have seen a lot of interviews with Freddie Mercury on YouTube, and I've read a lot of stuff about Freddie Mercury, and so I mean, yeah, like I would say definitely Rami Malek, he really embodied Freddie Mercury. Yeah, I don't know what he did to prepare, but I wouldn't be surprised if he pretty much like had to immerse himself in all things Freddie Mercury for like 2 or 3 years or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he had to do, because he just really, he came off as very believable to me. And I kind of feel like even, for those people who are lucky enough to have known Freddie Mercury in real life, I feel like they would say the same thing too about Rami Malek's performance as Freddie Mercury, that it was just very authentic and very real, and yeah, just a phenomenal performance. Has but even that, I would say, doesn't accurately describe it, but just, yeah, he really gave a really great performance. Just really great. And I mean, so much so that even like towards the end, I mean, the way it ends, I mean, it's not really a spoiler. I mean, you can look up a lot of the stuff that's in this movie. But yeah, towards the end it shows them, when they're playing at the Live Aid concert, which was back in 85, I believe. Yeah, 85. And that was just that part alone in this movie. Like if there was nothing else, like if there was not really nothing else to this movie, and they just kept that ending, I would have still enjoyed it. And I feel like a lot of other people would have still enjoyed it as well. Because I mean, it wasn't just about the music, but just the performance. Seeing Rami Malek up there on the stage and dancing back and forth across the stage and interacting with the crowd, and I mean, it made me feel like I was at an actual Queen concert. Yeah, it was just a very powerful scene, and I mean, they definitely I don't know what else. Wait, what am I trying to say? It's just a very powerful scene. I guess I can't say any more than that. Anything more than that, as far as that scene is concerned. Yeah, just, I mean, obviously, if you're a fan of Queen, if you're a fan of Freddie Mercury, if you're just a fan of rock music in general, I highly, highly, highly recommend this movie to you. Go watch it, go see it. You won't be disappointed. As far as, like, for those people who have given it bad reviews, obviously they're not fans of Queen. They're not fans of Freddie Mercury. They're not fans of rock music at all. Either that or they expected way too much. I mean, because, this movie is, like, barely over 2 hours long. So, obviously, there's not a whole lot of details, I mean, there's still a lot of stuff, It touches upon Freddie Mercury's life. It doesn't go into like, really great detail. But it still touches upon his life. And, the relationships he had, pretty much like how he eventually came to terms and accepted the fact that he was a homosexual man. Because I guess for the longest time he kind of denied that part of his life. At least that's how it comes off in the movie. I don't know, if they lied about that, then obviously that would suck if they did lie about that, but I don't know. I don't really think they did, because I think that's something that they would check on before including it in the movie. So, I don't know. Again, like, the people that didn't like the movie, that gave it bad reviews, hey, you guys either, again, you're not a fan of Queen, you're not a fan of Freddie Mercury, you're not a fan of rock music, or you just expected way too much. Yeah. Which, by now, we should all learn to expect that, that Hollywood, when it comes to these kinds of movies, they're not going to make something just for the real hardcore fans. They want to make something that, something that everyone and anyone can like and enjoy and appreciate. So, and they did that with this movie, with Bohemian Rhapsody. So, hey, at the end of the day, that's all anyone can really ask for. I mean, when you think about it, really, it's... I mean, ultimately, as far as my rating goes for this movie, I definitely got to give it 10 out of 10. Yeah. If I had to say, like at the absolute bare minimum, 9.5 out of 10, but I'm just going to go all the way 10 out of 10. Because ultimately this movie, it inspired me. It reminded me of why I got into music in the first place. Why I picked up the guitar in the first place. And, I feel like it definitely is one of those movies that can remind people, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, what you believe in or don't believe in. It's one of those movies that will definitely remind you of, the fact that of how powerful music really is, and how far-reaching it truly is, and just the fact that music alone can actually do so much, even when we think it can't. It does. It usually does. Music unites people, bridges the gaps between generations, and music helps people find a common interest, ultimately helps people just forget about the problems, even if only for brief moments at a time. If something can do that, it's not bad. I mean, for me, I don't consider that bad. So, yeah, I guess that'll do it for my review of Bohemian Rhapsody. I apologize if this ended up being way too long, but just had so much to say. I still feel like I still have so much more to say about it, but yeah, I guess I should end it. So yeah, once again, I give it 10 out of 10. That'll do it for my review of Bohemian Rhapsody. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Go see it. Go see it. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching this. Thanks for listening. As always, next time, don't forget to keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.